Noreen, thank you so much for that. I know Kaz feels the same way about this place. And thanks so much to the Shattuck family. I was very moved by those stories you told. So loved hearing that. The truth is, I feel a little out of place up here. I generally believe that agents should stay in the background. The work that we do is all about the work that our writers do. But when Ruth asked me to introduce her, she said, "It's because you know everything." It's true. I think I have read every word she has written in the last 10 years. Some of them more than once, many of them more than once. So I just wanted to say a little bit about her words. Ruth had been at the New Republic for about 3 years when we met. At TNR, she covered many things, but was especially able to explore her interest in literature written after the Holocaust. She wrote lengthy, insightful pieces on W.G. Sebald, Paul Celan, Primo Levi, among many others. These pieces were eventually worked into her magisterial book, 1,000 Darknesses. At the end of that book, Ruth wrote, "Art makes comparisons. It encourages empathy. It awakens the imagination. In short, it emphasizes the fundamental sameness of the human condition." The same can be said of literary criticism, great literary criticism, and of Ruth's work. Although Ruth has now written for numerous publications, she was on staff and writing regularly for TNR until just recently. TNR is, of course, known for its combative reviews. I chose that word carefully from a piece by Leon Wieseltier in which he defended Ruth's acerbic, again, Leon's word, review of Jonathan Franzen's Freedom. But in everything she has written, Ruth has followed Margaret Atwood's dictum to tell the truth when you can see it. She can see the truth and is unafraid of controversy. But Ruth is equally unafraid to declare her own enthusiasms, though she has lamented that all happy reviews are alike. We damn not with faint praise, but with hyperbole. She has found, it's a good one, right? She has found fresh language to praise many writers, among them Alice Munro, Charles Bach, and my personal favorite, David Mitchell, about whose work she said, "Of all the books that I have read as an adult, the novels of David Mitchell have come the closest to resurrecting my own childhood reading utopia." About Black Swan Green, she therefore wrote, "I will just say, I liked it." With the birth of her 2 children, Sam and Phoebe, who are with us this evening, and facing the challenge of balancing her family and her professional and intellectual lives, Ruth turned more and more to the complexities of women in literature. In a recent piece, "Why the Literary Landscape Continues to Disadvantage Women," she commented that there are 2 distinct types of equality, and women of my generation had achieved only the first. We had gained admission to the world of men. The second type of equality, as yet unachieved, involves remaking the landscape itself, redefining the terms on which value is assessed, rewriting the book of myths. That piece brought me back to the art historian Linda Nochlund's seminal 1971 essay, "Why Have There Been No," I didn't know you know your head. "Why Have There Been No Great Women Artists?" in which Nochlund delineates the enduring institutional impediments to women in the arts, in the visual arts. Nochlund concluded by saying in part, and I've actually completely bowdlerized this, so apologies to Professor Nochlund, using as a vantage point their situation as underdogs, women can reveal institutional and intellectual weaknesses and take part in the creation of institutions in which clear thought and true greatness are challenges open to anyone, man or woman, courageous enough to take the necessary risk, the leap into the unknown. In her body of work, Ruth Franklin has created such a clear-thinking institution. She has redefined the terms on which literary value is discussed, and for that, among other more personal reasons, I'm so thrilled that we're honoring her today. Ruth's next leap is into a definitive, necessary biography of the writer Shirley Jackson. Surely one of the most unusual, most truthful, and most unjustly neglected writers of the 20th century. Ruth has written about Jackson that no writer since Henry James has been so successful in exploring the psychological reach of horror, locating in the question of what we fear, the key to unlock the darkest corners of the psyche. Well, here is a woman with very little fear, but much insight into the literary psyche. Ruth Franklin.
Thank you, Sarah, for that marvelous introduction. I'm going to be brief because I see that my children are starting to yawn. So I'll talk quickly. Part of the reason I asked Sarah to join me here is that I wanted to publicly acknowledge all that she's done for me. As she pointed out so modestly, ages usually stay in the background. But aside from my editor at the New Republic, Leon Wieseltier, no one has supported and believed in my work the way Sarah has. Over the last 10 years, she has been my advocate, my cheerleader, my sounding board, and my faithful friend. Agent is truly inadequate to describe Sarah's role in my life, and I'm so grateful for her. I want to thank the Center for Fiction and the Shattuck family for this wonderful honor. This award reflects on the superb editors whose expertise I've been lucky to have. In addition to Leon, there's Leo Carey and Henry Finder at The New Yorker, Ann Holbert at Slate, Albert Mobilio at Book Forum, and Bob Boyers at Salamanca. Bob Weil, my editor at Norton, has for many years been one of my most tireless and enthusiastic supporters. And as an editor myself at the New Republic, I had the benefit of learning from some of the most talented writers working today, including Stanley Kaufman, James Wood, and Jed Kropp. I'm lucky also to have a partner, Joseph Browdy, who is a writer himself. Not only is he my most valued and trusted reader, he also understands that diplomacy is at least as important as honesty when editing someone you love. And to my children, Sam and Ruby, I'd like to say thank you in advance for behaving yourselves here tonight. It's been said, usually by writers taking a swipe at critics, that nobody dreams of growing up to be a book reviewer. Maybe I shouldn't admit this, but I did. There's a part of me that still can't believe that I make a living doing what I love to do most, reading and thinking about books. I know my children think it's a little ridiculous that I get to stay home and read all day while other people have to go to work. Not a day goes by that I don't feel lucky to be engaged in work that I not only enjoy but also believe in. Work that takes over my mind and my life, just as the books I constantly accumulate take over my apartment, but work that nonetheless always feels like a privilege and an honor. It might sound odd or grandiose to speak of book reviewing in these terms. One reason I'm grateful that an award like this one even exists is that we are living in a time in which criticism is suffering from a demotion of prestige. Newspapers across the country have closed their book review sections for lack of advertising. No one can mention Lionel Trilling anymore without reminding us in incredulous tones that his books were once bestsellers, something few critics would dream of hoping for today. At the same time, more books are being published than ever before, and people somehow still seem to be eager to buy them, as long as they're by Steve Larson. But in all seriousness, it's puzzling to me that the increase in books published has been met not with an increase in book reviewers, but rather with a decrease. I hate to blame the victims, but it does seem to me that we critics bear some responsibility because we haven't gone down fighting. To a certain extent, I fear that we've acquiesced in our own decline. Nearly 100 years ago, Rebecca West, in a piece for The New Republic called The Duty of Harsh Criticism, castigated her fellow reviewers for reducing their work to what she called a chorus of weak cheers. And let anybody think we don't take this piece seriously, it still appears at the top of the website every day. She complained about a general sense that it was silly to waste one's fierceness on unserious matters, especially in a time of war, as when West was writing, art and literature can seem less important than other things. This perception persists in our own time of war. Just look at the magazine editors who pay several dollars a word for feature stories and a fraction of that for criticism, which happens to be the most poorly paid beat in journalism. Even if we agree with West that the life of the mind does matter, it can be tempting to fall prey to what she called the vice of amiability, to reserve our energy for supporting writers that we admire rather than criticizing those we dislike. I can't tell you the number of times I've heard some famous writer or other declare that he or she only writes positive reviews because the negative reviews are so, well, negative. Some of us do this for reasons of self-preservation. We might run into our subjects at cocktail parties. And trust me, sometimes we do. But more often, I think it's because of a misguided philosophy of criticism based on the idea that reviewing books is somehow secondary, even shameful, something no one grows up dreaming of doing. You see this assumption everywhere, even in the New York Times Book Review, where not long ago, a legendary critic, reviewing a book of essays by another critic, cautioned his colleagues to always understand that in this symbiosis, meaning between writer and critic, you are the parasite. It's a pithy formulation, but it obscures the fact that some parasites are essential. We're not fleas feeding off the blood of our hosts. Book critics and novelists are separate species who nonetheless need each other for our own mutual good. It's obvious why the reviewer is the novelist. Not just any novelist, but a good novelist, even a great one, to challenge us to rise to his or her level. But the novelist also needs the reviewer, not just as a vehicle for advertisement, or whatever that's worth, but as an enforcer of standards. If we speak only to praise, and my children can vouch that I have never been guilty of that, then praise itself becomes cheapened and ultimately meaningless. Not all books are worth reading. Some are dull, some are poorly written, and some can actually have a pernicious effect on our culture. It's the task of the critic to champion books that deserve to be championed, and to take a stand against those that have the power to harm. And anyone who doesn't believe that books have the power to harm is not taking books seriously enough. Roger Shattuck once wrote that a work of art is like a fallen comet, come down, blazing and wonderful. He strived to write about art in a way that would give insight not only into the work, which he called that fallen, cold, heavy stone, awesome but dead, but also into the human mind. The point for him wasn't to boil everything down to categories and analysis, but to approach the work holistically, as a live thing. One of Shattuck's great essays, more a short story than an essay, dramatizes a debate about how to talk about literature between a professor and a former student. The student argues passionately and convincingly against the academic model of criticism. Instead, he tells his professor, they're talking about Marcus, but it could be any great writer. He says, show us what he does and how. You're good at that. Show us what he does and how. I might also say, show us what she does and how. That's the essence of criticism. He made it sound so simple, and maybe for him it was. He was good at that. I'm honored to be following in Roger Shattuck's footsteps, and I'm so grateful to his family for supporting his legacy with this award. Thank you.